After launching Android 13 in the latter portion of 2022, we're solely focused on the next OS iteration. Based on previous roadmaps, the developer preview launch phase for Android 14 could be right around the corner, but with that in mind, when could we see a full release? Well, let's work it out together. Thanks for watching 9to5 Google here on YouTube. Remember to thumbs up, hit subscribe and then tap the bell icon to be among the first to watch our upcoming videos. So a lot of what we're speculating is by examining previous timelines and using these to forecast for the future. We're under no illusions though, like last year, Google could easily rip up the playbook and launch Android 14 at any time over the next 10 months, but that would be a little weird given those previous timelines as we mentioned. There are a few signposts that subtly indicate that time frame in which we could see this full Android 14 launch though. It's also worth noting that we're talking about the stable operating system builds that we'll see running on the reinvigorated Pixel series, not actually the AOSP version of Android 14, which is used to build ROMs and other third-party versions of this software. Let's start with some known quantities. Firstly, the internal dessert codename is Upside Down Cake. This was found courtesy of code changes posted to the Android open source project as long ago as April of last year. Publicly, since Android 10, each launch is known only by its assigned release number, so don't expect anyone at Google to be officially referring to Upside Down Cake. Instead, it'll strictly be Android 14. Of course, we could see some Easter eggs featuring the titular cake, as we have been previous years. When could we get a first taste of Android 14 via that developer preview? Well, in years gone by, the Android developer preview phase has regularly started in February, and that has been adhered to for a few years now, and we don't really expect that to change here with Android 14. Acting as the earliest launch point for Android 14, this is strictly aimed at app and software developers to test their applications and the various connotations of the software. There's nothing stopping you from flashing the developer preview on your Pixel. We wouldn't always recommend it though, unless you have a backup phone to use just in case you encounter some issues. Google Pay and other apps requiring CTS checks or CTS check passes are often unavailable or unreliable, so it's something we always say steer clear of, at least until later on. This early preview phase is often full of bugs and certainly not suitable for your main or only device as a result. After this developer-focused build, you'll have the chance to test the next operating or mobile operating system by way of a public-facing Android 14 beta launch. Although it's hard to truly be certain, such as the predictability or unpredictability of Google's timeframe releases, we expect eligible Pixel phones to be able to sideload the Android 14 developer preview at some point in late February, so a month from this video going live, or around that release period. As for the public beta, Google has favoured a slightly longer testing phase with Android 12 and Android 13. This has ordinarily started in April, with up to 4 or even 5 beta releases helping prepare for a stable release. 3 betas is often the starting point, with additional updates also having a high potential to occur. To accommodate this public beta release, Google is said to be concluding the similarly confusing QPR or quarterly platform release beta that is available to eligible Pixel phones ahead of each quarterly Pixel feature drop. Anyone currently test driving the QPR releases will have the opportunity to switch via the Android Beta website, which you will find a link to down in the description below. Last year, Pixel owners were able to opt in for whatever public preview they preferred, the more stable QPR channel or the Android 13 beta. It wouldn't be a stretch to assume Google will adopt a similar stance with the Android 14 beta, considering that the QPR betas are still concurrently running. You can only switch though from one channel to the other if the existing build is newer than the one pre-installed upon your device. If not, enrolling could actually wipe your device before installing that new update. All of this will depend heavily though on just how many changes Google is preparing in Android 14. Material U has been the biggest overhaul to the mobile operating system since Android 5.0 Lollipop. It's highly unlikely that another massive set of changes are coming, but we would like to be surprised all the same. It would be fairly safe to expect mostly under-the-hood alterations and consolidation of the core principles of dynamic colour and Material U to be at the forefront yet again in Android 14. We're wondering if Google can leave that media player alone this year though, as it's somewhere that they always seem to want to tweak and tune, but we await Google making changes here once again. Platform stability is something you may have heard, and this is normally the point at which Google has finalized all APIs and expected behaviors ahead of the full release. This can vary from release to release, but often occurs in or around that third Android beta update, and that's always subject to change as we mentioned, but it tends to be the case given the previous track record, which we think is quite consistent over the last few years. Often, Android developers are then able to submit apps to the Google Play Store that target or utilize these new APIs. If we start looking at full release schedules though, Android 12 was released slightly later than expected back in October 2021, likely to coincide with the Pixel 6 release. Under a year later, Android 13 was made available for Pixel devices in August 2022, before the Pixel 7 series arrived, and that was despite strong signs that it would arrive in September with those. Without a crystal ball, it's hard to truly be certain. That said, Q3 2023 is almost a certainty for the Android 14 launch timeframe. If Google makes wholesale changes, it could arrive later. At present, it still looks like minor tweaks and refining are set to be more likely, as we've mentioned. At this stage, we don't know much about what Google has in store for Android 14, although we're speculating that it will be minor. The Mountain View firm, though, has confirmed a few things publicly, and at least inadvertently, over the past few months already, and there are some changes that we think are pretty concrete given that confirmation. Of course, the Pixel 8 series will almost certainly launch with Android 14 pre-installed. It's not clear, though, if this late 2023 flagship or the late 2023 flagship phones will include satellite connectivity for emergency messaging. Google's Hiroshi Lockheimer did confirm that Android 14 will support this connectivity at launch over on his Twitter account. Effectively, this allows your phone to connect to local satellites in areas where signal strength or connectivity is non-existent. Qualcomm is actually set to offer something similar on devices with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chips, at least chips that are released with devices later this year too. So this move coincides with Google's regular release schedule for new Android builds. We'll need Tensor G3 to support this too, if it is to be available on the Pixel 8, but we are expecting to learn a little bit more as the betas progress. Android 13 also introduced the predictive back gesture to the OS. The downside is that this doesn't work everywhere and doesn't work within application menu structures. If implemented and enabled within the device developer options on your phone running Android 13, you can activate this with a long swipe and hold gesture, which will show the home screen in Android 13, showing you where you're going to go back to. Android 14 will enable predictive back gestures by default, while the upcoming OS is set to offer a similar experience when users swipe within applications, and this just lets you know where the back gesture is going to take you by leveraging default or custom animations. This means a swipe and hold gesture to the sides of your screen will show you just where you'll end up within an application, be that back to the main menu or any other section. Not only will this make it easy to see where you're going, but it will be more helpful than simply showing the home screen, at least in our opinion. So although it's only two major changes that we're fully aware of, we do know that a number of high-end Android smartphones will likely receive the Android 14 update in the months preceding the official AOSP launch. Expect the likes of Samsung, OnePlus, Oppo, Xiaomi, and a few more on top of that to offer updates, of course on their own various timescales. Some OEMs may even offer Android 14 beta programs for user testing phases ahead of stable releases in late 2023 and early 2024. Usually that timeframe tends to be the case with existing flagship phones. When we start to look at the made by Google devices though, the Pixel 5, 4a 5G, the 5a, the 6 series, which includes the 6a, and the 7 series are set to be eligible for Android 14 and the associated developer previews plus that beta phase, and depending on when the Pixel 7a gets released, it too might be added. Just what other OEMs do, we simply don't know at this stage, but Samsung has always offered a One UI beta, while OnePlus and Oppo are likely to offer some form of Oxygen OS or Color OS beta for their latest and greatest flagships. Xiaomi, they're a little bit slower with their own MIUI rollouts, so expect to hear more at some point later this year from the Chinese OEM. When the time comes though, we will have full coverage of all aspects of Google's next major software release, as you can expect from here at 95 Google. From the start of the Android 14 developer preview right through to the beta phase, we will be on this, and then of course we will give you a full rundown on the eventual launch. So that's basically an overview of a few things that we expect with the Android 14 developer preview, the potential beta, and that full fat launch. I want to ask you though, what do you want to see from this release? Do you want to see an overhaul, or do you want to see some changes in specific areas? Let us know down in the comment sections below, and stay tuned for our in-depth coverage hopefully, which will start very, very soon. Until next time though, this is Damien with 95 Google saying thanks for watching, and I will speak to you later.